we doing tonight? I see some of my former colleagues from the days we used to work out in the field. We have laborers there. It's great to see you. So first of all, Tony, thank you for that very kind remarks. And it as you were talking, just reminded me of the history, those details, how politics with a small p come into play. And I'll talk more about that in a moment. And certainly, Ben, for what you do each and every day. It's great to be back. It's hard to believe it's been 8 years. So I'm Don Norcross, as I like to tell folks sometimes. I said we have over 200 lawyers in caucus in Congress, and there's only one electrician. So we get a little chuckle out of it, and then they ask me, can I come over and do some work at their house? And I said, no, I'm a little busy, but my son will be happy to do that. So first of all, thank you for coming together. Timing is everything. And you could not ask for a better time to have the discussion about what's going on in Washington more broadly than we have now. But in talking about the history, I just want to recognize in the back there, Mary Cruz, who is my chief of staff. Mary keeps the trains running on time. Well, we want to talk about Washington in general, but we can't have that discussion unless we talk about where we are and Rowan. So when Tony was talking about, how Rowan University, or as it used to be called, Glassboro State, and how much we needed to do from a political standpoint, from a government standpoint. So back when I started in the state legislature, and ended up moving to the Senate, higher ed reorganization from the state level had been tried twice previous to when I got there. And it failed for a number of reasons. And I would suggest that might be the parochial interest of those who've been established in the state. Whether you know or not, New Jersey spends an incredible amount of money of K to those who graduate from high school. And we do it better than virtually any state in the union. Our outcomes for those children who we call our next generation, remarkable. But when it came to four-year institutions, south of Trenton, 17 north of Trenton, we had 3 south of Trenton. The one you're in here today, the one in Stockton down towards Atlantic City, and of course Rutgers. So the seats were not available. The idea, then Senate President Sweeney, who remarkably enough, he and I grew up together in Pennsauken High School. He ended up joining the Ironworkers Union, and I ended up becoming an electrician. So we're not the typical cast of those elected officials. He and I went to Camden County College, but we are known as 2 guys who did the other 4-year school, an apprenticeship. And this all comes back to what we're here today is why I ended up in Washington. So we'll talk a little bit more about that. But the idea, then Governor Christie, we knew South Jersey was not getting its fair share. You hear that quite a bit, but we had the statistics on it, on how short we were being made. And we can go on and talk about buildings, but the idea of Rowan came out of this not only as a research institution, but literally reset the stage for what was going on. And what you've done with community colleges and to make it affordable, quality education on behalf of all the parents, thank you for making it affordable and accessible for all those students who want to call Rowan home. So that deserves a round of applause. So what's going on? As you heard, I started as an electrician. And when we talk about what is going on in Congress, it's supposed to be a representative body, this great democracy. And back when it started, you had a whole lot of farmers, writers, across the board. Diversity comes in many shapes and sizes. And your background, your history, your experiences mean so much particularly when you're trying to look at a vision across for our country. So the idea of being an electrician, you get sort of those funny looks, is actually quite valuable. I serve on the Education and Labor Committee, and one of those areas are job site safety, OSHA, as we know it, a bill and a law that went into effect during the Nixon administration. And we're always getting hit in these hearings, and I'll give you a quick example of, you're over-regulating us, you're making us do this or do that, come on, you're killing us, stifling. And when we talk about job site safety, Mr. Gardner knows this one, it means something much different to me. Because in my career, when I was out in the field, 3 times on a job, we had somebody killed. And I'll give you the one story, Garden State Park, when we were building it as a racetrack, or a tin knocker. Tin knocker is a sheet metal worker, for those who don't know it, had fallen off the scaffold and died. Job site shuts down. We probably had 400 people on the job at the time. Everybody goes home. But because of my position, I had to stay late to make sure the building was locked up, the electricity was running. And you could see out, and there was a car coming in. My car, my van back then, was sitting out there and no other cars. And somebody got up and a young lady got out. And she's looking around. And so I go out, hey, can I help you? She goes, I'm looking for my dad's car. He was the guy who was killed on the job that day. Job site safety matters. It's a matter of life and death, and it doesn't come down to just being overregulated. The reason I bring that up is each state has options on how they handle job site safety, public employees, private employees. But the idea of how America today on the job is so much safer because of what government does right. And I say that in a time that government is being challenged. It's being challenged like never before. The idea of that Ben Franklin statement, it's a republic if you can keep it. I used to laugh at that won't happen. Folks, this is different. I was in Congress for Trump 1.0, and I should mention, like many of us, I worked with the Trump organization building his casinos down in Atlantic City. We have quite a bit of history of how he worked. But now things are different. And it's a dangerous spot for our country to be in. This isn't about red or blue, Democrats, Republicans. This is about who we are as a nation. I used to talk about when it comes to Donald Trump, we are seeing unprecedented challenges to the way things are done, which doesn't make it bad just because of that. You can take a look at what they're doing. And I say quite often, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should do that. Just because you can do it doesn't mean you should do it. The values that you grew up with, the morals, the community you live in, all factor into this. So often they talk about the idea that government should be run like a business. Okay, partially true. But we're not a business. We are humans, we are citizens, and that must be taken into effect. We'll touch base on that in a little while. I'm getting over a cold that tore my voice out for 3 weeks, so that's the good news. I won't go that long. So the pandemic hit. Boy, you were lucky. You were in high school, I guess. This was a very different world. And at the time, Democrats controlled the White House, the Senate, and the House of Representatives. But because of what was facing our nation, there was a very different focus. Survival, right? It started during the Trump 1.0 and bled into the Biden administration. Inflation Reduction Act, the infrastructure law, which they tried for years to get done. Infrastructure used to be the easiest bipartisan bill because everybody wants the road fixed. They want the water plant, all those things. You need them no matter where you live. Yet, oh, you're expanding the debt. The political fights that took place there was the president was blue and I'm from red. We couldn't get it. Luckily, we finally got it done. And that is still paying off in dividends across the country, no matter where you live. One of which just happens to be in New Jersey. The largest private sector job in this country is going on in North Jersey. It's called the Gateway Tunnel Project. It started, stopped, it started, but it was fully funded. It literally is taking those tunnels that were flooded out during Sandy, that are well over 100 years road. And why does that count to us? Because every train that comes through this part of the country goes through that tunnel to get there. Not just because I take it to Washington every week, but that fundamentally, from Connecticut on down through, quite frankly, all the way down to Florida, is something that's critically important, not only for those who take it, but for the economy. You might have heard, because of what's going on, the president come out saying, I'm canceling that project. That's a big deal. And that plays into politics because literally he said, because Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries are from that part, that's why I'm canceling it. Literally spoke out loud that this is political retribution. Okay. That is interesting. We'll see where that ends up. Courts are going to get involved and the idea of what's going to happen November 1st. So let me talk about a little bit what's going on. Today is day 30 of the shutdown. I've been through several shutdowns since I've been in Congress, and they used to be a really big deal. You know, how can we do this? Our government's shutting down a few days. Last time it went on a bit longer, but it was considered a partial shutdown. This one is very different than what we're experiencing. The retribution that's going on, the fact that the White House, the executive branch, is deciding without authorization from Constitution, the appropriators, the House, the Senate, that he's going to pay the military. Great. I think it's a great idea. But I think everybody should be paid. And the way that he is going about getting his money, for all those who are studying government, you might want to look at this one because it will end up being in the court. So the ACA called Obamacare years ago when they were trying to kill it. Really important for those who are buying on the open exchange, as they call it, in New Jersey. November 1st is the day that the new rates must be published and out. I'm not sure how many in this room are doing it, but there's many people in New Jersey that look at this. During the pandemic, I'm going back to the Inflation Reduction Act, it set aside enhanced subsidies for those on the Affordable Care Act. On the 1st, although the numbers come out, an average increase of over 175%. So if your tuition here is, I don't know, 20,000, whatever it is, Tony would like it, close to double that. That's a big deal. I went through a life-challenging event in April where, thank God, we had a great healthcare system. They saved my life. Spent 5 weeks in it. The idea that I had great healthcare, everybody should have great healthcare. And the idea that you're going to forgo that, you're young, you're healthy, but things happen. This is a big deal. It shouldn't matter what zip code you were born in or where you live, the fact that you should have access to the same healthcare that I got. And that's why, fundamentally, one of the major issues on the shutdown is healthcare. Now, I'm asking you to go back a little bit. When Donald Trump won, they controlled all sides of government, the House, the Senate, the White House, And some would even suggest the Supreme Court. You don't control it, but you certainly controlled who was sitting in those seats for a variety of reasons. The tax bill that we passed during the Trump administration had sunset on many of the massive tax breaks. That was going to end very shortly. So, reconciliation, guess what got done? The tax bill. Now, is there something in it for all of us? Sure. But as a percentage of who you are, if you're a billionaire, that was one of the greatest bills you've ever had. Those tax breaks, north of 70%, go to those 1% of 1%ers. Okay. Do we have any 1%ers in this room? I didn't think so. But the idea of no tax on tips, okay, that's not a bad concept. That sunsets. No tax on overtime, that sunsets, which means in a few years that's going away. You know what stayed? The tax for the billionaires. So I just tell you in a way, so when it came to the end of the fiscal year, the cliff, the end of September, this is where the Senate has some different rules than we do in the House. The bill came out of our side, went over to the Senate, and it did not provide for enough votes to overcome the filibuster, and there it sits. Because we wanted to make sure health care was included. Then, all of a sudden, our colleagues on the other side, oh, we can't get it done. Well, you sure as shit got it done when you won that tax break, but you didn't want to do it back then. And why is it important now? Because we hear it doesn't start till January 1. No. November 1st, the new rates are coming out. And you will hear those screams coming across the state of New Jersey because they need the rates in. So for those in open enrollment can pick it. So January 1. They wanted to push that back to the end of December to have that discussion. It's too late. So here we are. Quite an embarrassment. I have been in Washington each week. I still have meetings with constituents. We're doing some of the briefings we get from me, particularly from the military. The Republicans have made the decision, the House, the Speaker, not to bring their members back to Washington. Now, the real reason is they don't want them to be there because the message will get floated differently. And when there's nothing going on, they tend to get a little bit of trouble. That's the real truth about it. But we can still do oversight even though the government is shut down. And there's a lot of oversight to be done. For those of you who are watching what's going on in Venezuela, I had a briefing today on that. I can't tell you what it was about. It was classified. This isn't good, folks. This is not good. I can tell you that. And there's a variety of reasons. You don't just go and start blowing up people. You know, there's law enforcement and what they're legally allowed to do, and then our military and what we're legally allowed to do. This is changing what we know. Now, how long it exists, and to the degree, we will have a discussion later when I can talk about it in open session. But that's where it really counts. What's going on in China, what's going on in Russia and Ukraine. All these things have literally separated in terms of not letting us know. It's a big deal. We've seen the Department of Education attacked and they want to close it down. So I just started with those. What the Trump administration has done remarkably well is to flood the zone. Every day, there's something new. Don't look at this, look at this. The White House, the destruction of the East Wing. By the way, I get more inquiries on that than some of the other very real things that impact your life on a daily basis because people feel like that's ours. Setting aside, fired the group that does the oversight on that. It's different. But not only in reconciliation did we talk about the tax breaks, it changed higher ed in the way we finance. Pell Grants are being cut back, And that is so important for so many. I think the most important thing is what you do here in Rowan is start out with affordability, and then we'll back into it. But when was the last time we talked about immigration and the idea of deportation of undocumented? How we as a country literally have changed the narrative on who we all are. My grandmother came from Germany. In Gloucester County, right where we are, 30% of the population identifies with Italian heritage. We're all part of that melting pot. When we say that's one of our strengths, our values, how we all come together, this is where the narrative. They're the rapists, they're the murderers, they're the ones who's tearing our country down. It's a big difference. Go talk to your grandparents if they're still around, the first generation. We can do this. We should have legal immigration. We need to protect our borders. But if you've seen what has been going on with ICE and what they're hiding behind, it's stunning. No other law enforcement does what they do. Covering their faces, no identification, no cameras, nothing. Not one oversight hearing in the Senate or the House. That's a big deal. So, SNAP benefits used to be called food stamps. The ability for those who are financially challenged, almost 30% are seniors, to get food. Years ago, they used to be stamps. And the shaming that took place at the market when they pulled it out, they didn't want to show that it was food stamps, that they were being helped by their government. So we changed it. We do it to a credit card. November 1st, Trump announced that we're not going to pay those, not send out the money for who needs it. And by the way, the first of the month's really important because they run out of food because the money ran out from the previous month. There's approximately $5 to $6 billion in the fund that we congressionally set up years ago for contingencies. Don't believe any of the bullshit. They can't do it. They absolutely legally, and it's going through the court. He has chosen not to use this money. And he'll tell you it's for this. You don't raise your hand, but if you know someone on food stamps, they're having a tough shot at life. And the fact that you're going to use our most vulnerable to twist us into a deal is about as evil as you can get. Ben, sorry. I've always been a bipartisan person working through, and I wasn't one of these. It has changed the way that government is being done. He has almost sidelined Congress and its roles. It's not a good place. And I want to finish up because I want to take questions. You've heard a little about the redistricting that's taking place across the country. Texas started. The reaction was now California did it. The midterms, and this is what we do know. The ability, I talked about oversight hearings, to be able to question, which is what we do in a democracy, what the executive branch is doing, has not happened because they're running the show. He understands if we take back the House of Representatives, we now take the gavels, the chairmanships, where we can now start asking those tough questions. So he understands history, and I'm sure you've thought that the chances of the party out of power coming back usually can pick up somewhere between 30 and as high as 50 seats. Probably won't be that. So he's changing the way the game is played. The Supreme Court decision said it is allowed to set up districts on political lines. You see, Texas is going to be all red. California is going to be all blue. Just go across the fights that are having here, trying to protect us from getting the gavels back. But to me, It's important, but the most important thing I can leave you with tonight, because this is going to be your generation. This is going to be your world. This is going to be your government. We're setting up red states and blue states. They might actually look like the dividing line during the Civil War because they tend to go that way. This is an existential, this is my opinion, existential threat to who we are as Americans. We don't want everything to be political. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. We might have to change the Constitution on this. That's my opinion. I think this is so dangerous to who we are. The idea of coming together, having talks, discussion, what we did today is what we normally do. We might have a policy disagreement, but at the end of the day, we come together. And I don't see that happening. So next Tuesday just happens to be the most consequential time, day, and outcome since Donald Trump was sworn in a little less than a year ago. New Jersey and Virginia are going to have their gubernatorial elections. So all my colleagues, this is their year off. New Jersey never gets a year off. We never get a year off. And both in Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, and in New Jersey, Mikey Sherrill running, Jack Ciattarelli. And it's an interesting dynamic that's going on. We have some friends in here who vote by mail. So I can talk about going out and voting. This is your duties. This is important. Folks, this is going to be viewed one of two ways. They look at New Jersey as a blue state. It's not a deep blue state, but it certainly had been leaning over the years. Virginia seems to be a little bit different. I think Abigail will be in a good position. Mikey and Jack are neck and neck. It could go either way. They will look at that country as a bellwether. I'm not sure. I was talking to some of the students down here about their internship and where did they work and how they work. So one of my duties that I've been assigned to is I sit on the NATO Parliamentary Association. What that does is each of the NATO countries, we get together as a legislative body from America and sit with them. So as we were doing it during the first administration, tell me about Trump. Everybody was curious, what's going on with Trump. That ended. NATO's still strong. I would suggest it is the most successful organization of its type in human history. Now Trump is reelected. Now people knew what they were voting for, and they got it. We're being looked at so differently from around the world. It's a big deal. So what is my report from Washington? It's a republic if you can keep it. Yes, we have to be fighting each and every step of the way for things that we agree upon. And we do agree upon many things. But it's not always the fight. He's running a company trying to make profits. But no, we're the human side of that equation. We see what happens on Tuesday. But long-term, the redrawing of the districts, I think, is the existential threat to who we are as a nation. I hope I'm wrong. I hope it doesn't turn out that way, because that's not who we are. We are that great melting pot that comes together, that speaks with one voice. That's who you can worship who you want. You can marry who you want. You can love who you want. We want to give that next generation the greatest education. You want to make sure they have a job that you can take care of your family. You work hard, you play by the rules, you can make it in this country. So don't lose hope, because we still are the greatest nation on earth. Thank you very much.
So a bunch of questions, Congressman, a bunch of questions came in. Some are going to touch on the topics that you already shared, and we're going to try and take the next 25 minutes or so to run through them as best we can.
Ooh, 25 minutes of questions.
It'll be
favorite.
fun. Well, we got plenty. And wanted to start with, because a question came in about mass transit. And I just wanted to start with that. You know, as someone from South Jersey, you surely know the frustrations of many people who live down here when it comes to the limited number of mass transit options. So the question is, what are your thoughts on how to increase mass transit options in this region? And is there any way that Congress can help in this area? Or is this really just a state thing?
No, that's a great question. How do we get the most densely state in the country to where they need to go, whether it's to the doctor, to your job, or anywhere else? And here's where the statistics, if you look at the mass transit in the state, you can imagine Bergen County, certainly the North Jersey, have quite a bit. Really the only one we had for so many years was the Patco high-speed line, which is its own entity, comes out of the DRPA. It was not New Jersey Transit. When the casinos came along, New Jersey Transit did do what they call the Gamblers Express. Yes, that is technically mass transit, but really hasn't been done that way.
That was New York to AC? Is that what you're
No,
talking?
from Philadelphia.
From Philadelphia.
Yeah, it goes through Linden Wall, comes down here. And we really do have an airport in Atlantic City, Galloway Township. Not a whole lot of planes go there. And I'll tell you a little side story to that one and where we were going to make that into a much more broadly used airport. But then we did the light rail going from Camden to Trenton, which is a diesel locomotive. And it goes along and uses line where heavy rail is used. I say that because it complicates how it works. In fact, didn't you work on that job? That's it. One of my old electricians is out in the audience. I said, Bechtel did that job. People didn't want it in the beginning. Now, if you go look to see where the growth in South Jersey, in those areas, those towns, those counties where growth has taken place, it's those villages, those towns right around there, the transit villages. So now I assume the reason this came up is originally we were supposed to go south from Camden to Glassboro, and there was politics involved in that, and they were going to fund it. There was a fight going on down here, so it went north. And ever since then, there has been the attempt to make sure, because of Glassboro State College, now Rowan, and the growth in this area is coming. So it's now applied for federal money because the study showed that it didn't hit enough people ridership-wise. We did not qualify for federal assistance. So the next best thing, the RPA is now doing it, and certainly New Jersey Transit, it's coming. And there is a fight on here, even though it's using mainly the existing right-of-way or the lines that have been there for years. And I can say with some assurances, I lived for almost 15 years in Camden on the corner of Cooper Street and the waterfront street that goes to the pavilion for concerts. The light rail makes the turn there. There's a traffic light. It's a diesel. First time I moved in, I heard it, oh my God, this is going to be, I'll never live. It blends in. So 15 years I live with it, you never even hear it. But the real help when it comes to mass transit is the growth, the ability for those to come together. You have Camden on one end, medical schools down there. You have Glassboro down here with Rowan and all the jobs in between. So I'm a big proponent of it. It's never easy, but I think we're going to get this one done.
Thank you. You obviously talked about the shutdown. You can imagine there were several questions that came in about it. Given your comments already, let me try and just ask this one question about it. How does this end? At some point, I mean, and let me just try to elaborate. At some point, do the Democrats say, we care about not paying people, and we'll do what the Republicans want. We won't get the health care money because there are too many people who are being unemployed, and we can't do it as Democrats. and that it'll be a fight 4 months from now. Is that what's going to happen, or is something else going to
I'll
happen?
give you the perfect answer. Yes, no, and maybe. And let me explain that. This could have been avoided. Everybody, oh, they wanted to shut it down. No, you don't. This is embarrassing. But they had the ability to avoid this. It didn't have to happen this way. As I told you, SNAP benefits is a conscious decision by the President of the United States that he will not invoke his powers to say, pay it. The money is there. So it's quite often they said, what's the off-ramp? How do we get there? Because obviously Trump is a very different president. He cares about the stock market, what goes on there. Never before has a president left the country like he has to go to Asia for some of the discussion, which are important but could have happened. He did. Remember America first? And he leaves. Not that I see any problem with that. As far as I'm concerned, he could have stayed there, and I think we would be better off. That is an editorial comment that is political. First thing has to happen is the reality of not having the health subsidies is going to hit on November 1st. That is as real as you're sitting here. Certainly, he talked about shutting down Gateway, and that's more of a financial impact to those in North Jersey. That's the second issue that I think is remarkably, for somebody who's made some very smart political moves, that could have been one of his dumbest moves, only to be surpassed is SNAP benefits don't come out on November 1st. I was at the food bank over in Pennsauken warehouse, just full food that they help pass out each and every day. And it's amazing what they're able to do. They believe that their food, and they feed all the food pantries in the area. There's a couple other major food banks, but the one, they believe they can run out in just a matter of weeks. Food is one of those essential items. So we'll go past November 1st. Some of that pain is going to start taking place. And then next Tuesday should have no relevancy, but it has all the relevancy. There's an election. See what that goes on. And then when Trump starts here, because we made deals before with the House, we made deals with the Senate, and Trump comes in and breaks those. So the trust factor here, that is normally a degree that you need to have to make a deal. That's the problem. Oh, we'll pass this bill. Yes, you'll do this. And then he'll go and shut down this program, that program, transfer the money, things that have never been done. So I think the off-ramp comes after next Tuesday. The outcomes of those elections will play some part. The pain is already inflicted for those in health insurance, and there's certainly going to be pain. He did do WIC, if you don't know, that's women, infants, and children, the food for those. So if you have a child, you're getting through that. There's not a clear off-ramp for either side.
Well, we'll have to see. One of the, another topic was affordability that came up a lot. According to the polls in New Jersey, cost of living is a dominant issue. For them, it's just really expensive to live here in New Jersey. So I wanted to combine two questions that came in. First of all, what's from your perspective, what's the state of the national economy? How are we doing? And how do you think Congress can be or should be addressing these cost of living concerns?
So we have cost of living for those on Social Security and disability that are built in the way they do it. So that continues to go. Now, that doesn't mean you're getting more extra money you'll buy. It's kind of just keeping a flat line with the cost of living that we all live with. So that's the good news. That's also the bad news for the future of Social Security. But affordability, we had, yes, last year's election where we're going to bring prices down. Obviously, people believe that Trump was going to deliver on that, and they won the election. It's clear. it's a real issue for Jersey, even in a normal year. We're a higher cost state. Number one, we tend to pay our people a little bit better, and in government, that's the same. We have something you might not see. It's called a pension for those golden years. We do a really good job of making sure that after you work your entire life, there's the dignity of those golden years. So those are additional costs. But New Jersey, and I should have started with this and talk about, we're the off-year election other than Virginia. So typically, if you go back 2 decades, all politics are local, that famous line. And generally speaking, the gubernatorial races were based on primarily New Jersey issues, or in Virginia. They tend to stay in the huddle. There's no way to be exempt from the national stories that are going on because it influences each and every day. And the focus is on that. This is completely different in this time. It was a little bit less 4 years ago when Phil Murphy was in 3.5 points of losing to Chitterelli. This year, it is a federal issue. It is a country issue. It is a Trump issue overlaid on smaller focus of New Jersey. Even though the affordability, for those of you who pay your energy bills, the electric rates are coming up, and there's going to be a debate on how we got there. Very complicated, and it's not easy just to blame somebody. Well, actually it is, and that's what they're doing. It's not going to go away very easy in affordability. Tariffs. It's a national issue with local impact. Tariff is called tax. Let's be absolutely clear, it's a tax. We end up paying for those tariffs. Tariffs can be an effective tool, some would say weapon, when there's unfair practices by other countries, and they certainly are. But those tariffs, those taxes, end up costing us more. The shutdown is going to impact that. Affordability, next to how do I get my meal? How do I eat? My job? How do I buy groceries? And this is a big deal because the first of each month, those supermarkets do it, and it's going to have an impact that I think will affect the outcome of the race.
One of the big issues that has come up in the last few months is the sight of armed members of the military deployed in American cities. For those opposed to this particular policy, this one specific concern is the arbitrariness of where these troops are deployed. That it would seem to many of the people who at least submitted a question on this topic that the president picks who he doesn't like, and that's where he's going to send troops on the street, thereby creating the chaos that he said was there in the first place. Given New Jersey's blue state status, especially in presidential elections, do you expect federal troops to be assigned at some point in the next few years to patrol the city of Camden? And is there anything that can be done to prevent that from happening? Or is this part of presidential authority?
Yes, no, maybe. No, this is fascinating because this is one area that the courts have spoken up early and often, and it's working its way through, depending on what state they're in. State does not have the jurisdiction, the federal courts, and they're working. Supreme Court have issued some stays for what's going on. Ultimately, they're going to make those decisions. And this goes back to the founding of our great country of when we could use it. So we're talking National Guard. I think people saw them along the border, the southern border, and what they had been doing for several years. It's a real problem when, and I see them, go in the train station, there's National Guard troops. Washington has some issues, but you can't cut their budget and then say you're having problems enforcing the laws and protecting your people. But let's come back to what is real. Camden, Trenton. If you go back, I think it's 17 years ago, Camden City had the highest murder rate in North America. The highest murder rate in North America. It's not a good time. We had a city police force that was challenged by any means. Most, if not all, lived outside the city. The county, the state got together and reimagined what a police force would look like with community policing. And I remember this because as they came in, I lived there. The first thing that they did is they were taking a sector one at a time, instructed each of the officers to knock on everybody's door, introduce yourself. Is there something I can help you with? And that went through every part of Camden. And you say, gee, did that make a difference? It was us versus them in Camden. Nobody looked at the police as they're there for me. If you're a parent and you can't send your child to school without the fear of a crime being committed against them, that's not a good look at all. Today, this summer was the first time, Mary helped me with this, in 50 years, not one murder in summertime in Camden. That's unheard of because it fundamentally changed. Point I'm trying to make here. If you have community policing, the committed police force, along with the social service net that goes along with that, you can change the way people feel about their community, and crime follows how they feel. It drops. The idea, the cost to send National Guard troops who are not trained in this is absolutely the wrong message and not a smart way of spending your money. We can do this. So instead of doing that, maybe in the beginning you have a little extra help. We get that. We used to have the state police. They used to come in for short periods, but fundamentally changed the way policing is done. Now we've helped them with Shot Spotter. They have now probably one of the best drone that's saving police from going into very tough areas. And I'll leave it with this one story. The use of force, which plays havoc in so many cities and towns around this country. It certainly was one of the leading issues when the riots we had. There was a gentleman right on Broadway, right by Cooper Hospital. A mental crisis was taking place, whether it was by drugs or otherwise, doesn't matter. I can tell you, for years gone by, that guy probably would have been shot when he went towards the police with a knife. They literally walked with him, surrounding him in a safe distance, walked down the street, not to the point that he finally calmed down, said, and they got the knife away and took him out. That's training, that's experience, that's about doing what is right. That's how we can do this. I love our National Guard. They do such great work, especially hurricanes, keeping us safe, but they're not law enforcement. They are not community social workers. So we can do this better. And yes, he has only sent it to blue states. There we go again. That's not the way you do this.
We've got about 5 minutes left. I've got 3 quick questions that we hope to cover with you. One consisting, someone always submits this one. Why are you a Democrat?
Great question. Why do I root for the Eagles? You happen to be from Philadelphia region. You're saying, gee, why is that? Well, my 4 boys in my family, I grew up in Pensacola, and my father was a labor leader. My mom was a stay-at-home mom until we got out of high school, and then she went back to school, but ended up being a social worker for seniors. So that's sort of my story. As a little kid, I used to go out with my father on picket lines when different issues were going on, always advocating for those, whether it was their workplace, to make sure they had a fair pay. And those were instilled into me. My three other brothers ended up going to college. Two of them very successful, got a professor, and I went to the other 4-year school. So those core issues of fighting for those who didn't have a voice for themselves has always been instilled with me.
Given what often, when people look at politics, particularly young people, they seem to see endless negativity in politics, unseemly compromises that have to be made. So why should young people look to run for political office?
If you're happy with where our country is, where your state is, where your hometown is, you don't have to run for office. But if you're concerned for your neighbors, you care about the education that we provide for them, that you want to see your next generation have a place where he calls home and be proud of it, jump in the ring. There's a lot to learn. Oh my God, is there a lot to learn? Listen, I'm the electrician. Going from there to the State House to Congress was a big deal. Learning curve was steep. But having that passion about other people, caring about your neighbors, will drive you to do the right thing and to serve in office. Dip your toes in the water before you jump all the way in, unless you're ready for it. There is no higher calling than to serving your neighbors, your community. I encourage you, if that's what drives you, be part of it.
Final question, our exit question. It's a tradition. We ask this of everybody who joins us here on stage. Congressman Norcross, what do you know now that you wish you knew when you were their age?
Ooh. Great question. Only to be followed, but if you could change it, would you go back and start your life over again? My experiences, both good and bad, made me who I am today. Helped me instill those values into my children and my grandchildren. So as many bad moves as I have made, I like how we got to where we are. And the idea of caring about people is something we all should do. So what would I change? I got the greatest wife. I got the greatest kids. We got the greatest gifts in the world. And thank you for sharing those with me.
On that note, let's thank Congressman Donald Norcross.
We got to do a selfie
We got to do another selfie. Okay, here we go.
with the whole gang. There you are. Great.
Congressman, we have for you, so you can be the first one on your block to have a genuine RIPAC t-shirt. Okay, very cool, there we go. And on the back, it reads, Workforce Development for Democracy, which is what we do. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for being here. Congressman, thank you.